Okay, so it's already time. Welcome again to the last block of the third day. And I would like to welcome Felipe Pinto d'Aguiar. He is presenting two pieces for solo guitar and one piece for 33 guitars utilizing Microtonal Scordatura. And he's presenting this on the third day on the third block. The music of Felipe Pinto d'Aguiar, 1982, has been regarded as possessing emotional drive and intensity by the Sydney Morning Herald. Originally from Santiago de Chile, Felipe has been involved in projects in Australia, Italy, France, Austria, Switzerland, China, England, Bolivia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Greece, Colombia, Chile, and the United States, in which he has collaborated with Arco Symphony Ensemble, Sound Icon, the Consort Guitarrístico, the Orquesta Sinfónica Universidad de Concepción, Ensemble Contemporáneo UC, Time Art Studio, Names Ensemble, Boston Música Viva, Ensemble Fractura, Son Experimental, Duo Quidi, and the Jack Quartet, among others. He holds a DMA in composition from Boston University, where he studied with Joshua Feinberg, thanks to a Fulbright grant. Previously, he completed a Master's of Music at the University of Melbourne, working with Elliot Geiger, and was a student of Alyosha Solovera. Described as one of the most powerful Chilean voices born in the 70s and 80s by El Mercurio, he takes inspiration from various sources, including visual arts, literature, films, daily life, and the natural world. He is an associate professor at the School of Music and Sonic Arts at the Faculty of Arts and Architecture of Universidad Austral de Chile in Valdivia. Please welcome Felipe Pinto d'Aguiar.
Welcome.
Thank you, Agustin. Thank you all. It's great to see you. It's a little sad that I have missed so many presentations, but I'm looking forward to catch up with the video recording. So today I will be talking about a recent publication, the CD. I'm still proud because it arrived just a week ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So let me see if I can share the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, perfectly.
We should be good to go. So this is a project in which I collaborated with Patricio Araya Guerra, guitar player, and it's called De Vez en Cuando. And as Agustin was saying, it contains pieces for solo guitar and also for multi-track recorded guitars, including one for 33 guitars. So I will be talking briefly about the Microtonal Scordatura utilized in the CD, and discussing a little bit about the harmonic tunings and some approximations I'm utilizing. Also, how this Scordatura enhances the resonance of the instrument. I will show you a short piece for solo guitar, which is called Artefacto. Then I'll speak briefly about the second piece of the album, Entre Otras Cosas, and then I will focus on the piece for 33 guitars, De Vez en Cuando, and I'll show you a fragment of it. It's a long piece, it's a 36-minute long piece, I think, but I will show you a fragment of it, and I'll be talking about the textures that I use in the piece, some techniques I utilize as transpositions and harmonic crossfades, and how the timbre is controlled with the density of the guitars. And I will introduce an idea I've been thinking about recently, which is the the notion of an acousmatic guitar, and I'd like to talk to you about that maybe in the discussion. And we can see how important is the tuning in order to create the timbres and in order to disguise the source, the sonic source, which are guitars in this case. So can you see the, I want to make sure that the presentation is moving on. So can you see the numbers?
Perfect.
Okay, thanks. So the two main tunings used in this album are the one above is E, B, G sharp, D, almost flat. And by almost flat, I mean about a third tone lower. So let's say minus 31 cents. So you can see that I'm trying to approximate the seventh partial of an E. Then the fifth string is in B and then E. So the above is more or less like a harmonic E structure. And below you have, starting from the highest string to the lowest, is E, C, almost flat, the same principle. So it's about minus 31 cents, F sharp, D, A, and D. So basically an open D harmonic tuning. And here you can see why this is important for the harmonic material of the piece. Of the pieces. In the first case, if you compare the open strings to the harmonic series of a low D, you can see how it corresponds. Of course, I'm using octave equivalence. And you can see how when the seventh partial comes either as an open string or a natural harmonic, it will be quite in tune. However, if I wanted to use the 11th partial, for instance, let's say an A quarter tone sharp or A sharp minus 49 cents, I don't have that available in my open strings, so I'm relying on the detune fourth string to get something similar to an 11th partial. So I'm assuming, or I'm making this gross approximation of minus 31 cents to minus 49. But in the end, you'll see that due to the big number of guitars utilized, you can still get the idea. I think the listening adapts to that. And I will have the same problem for all the partials, but at some times it will sound very in tune, let's say. In other places, it will be less in tune. And the same with the other tuning utilized in D. In the lower part, you can see the correspondence between the open strings and the harmonic series. And in this case, I have the second string as an approximation to the seventh partial. These tunings also have any consequences. You can see in the tuning in E, the fifth is duplicated. So you have the fifth on the fifth string and the second string, so that is reinforced, and that is going to have a particular effect in the overall timbre of the instrument. And in the case of the tuning in D, the fundamental is reinforced, so that will have a different implication in the timbre. In both cases, the tuning enhances the natural resonance of the instrument. So the guitars sound louder, and not just louder, but they sustain more the sound as in the regular tuning. The last piece, I will not talk about this piece, but you can listen to that if you want. Later, I will copy the link to the full album and also a video of the piece for 33 guitars. But in the case of the last piece, I'm utilizing a tuning that could be understood as a variation of the new standard tuning utilized in steel string guitars tuned by fifths. So in this case, I'm detuning the first string, which is usually tuned in G, to F sharp minus 49 cents, and then E, A, D, G, and C. So basically, I have an open C harmonic tuning with the in jazz language. I'm having the ninth, right, the 13th, and the 11th sharp, and also occasionally I am detuning the C string to D to get to a different harmonic space. So the first piece in the album is called Artefacto, and it's a miniature. It utilizes natural harmonics, ostinati, and it plays around with the opposition between predictable and unpredictable rhythms. And also there's an important aspect to it, which is the use of transposition in the end. It's a very simple repetition of the previous material but transposed, but it will have implications in the long term of the album, because that resource will be more developed and expanded in the piece for 33 guitars. So I would like to play this piece. Is a short piece. I think I should silence my microphone, and please, if you could just like tell me in the chat if it sounds correctly, and I will play it now. As you can see, the effect is it is subtle because only the pitches in the fourth string will have microtonal inflections, but it is enough to change the overall timbre, the overall sound of the guitar. The second piece utilizes the Scordatura of open D, and it's more like an improvisatory piece which relies on an evolving resonance, and the time is more flexible. It utilizes a spatial notation instead of traditional rhythmic notation. There's some only places where rhythm is more strict, but there are a lot of places where the performer has to make decisions in terms of duration and speed, provided the resonance of the instrument is prevailing. So you can check out that piece in the link I copied in the chat. And now I would like to move to the piece for 33 instruments. De vez en cuando, which is 33 multi-track recorded guitars. I have to say that the piece is conceived, it is created, so it could be performed live by 33 guitar players, probably in a circle surrounding an audience. But this is a version for one performer who recorded the 33 guitars. And it shares the tuning of Entre Otras Cosas, the piece I just recently briefly talked about. There are three groups of variable numbers of instruments which interact to create a series of timbral, harmonic, and rhythmic superpositions. And it has some of episodic structure. The important thing here is that the color of the guitar is denaturalized or mutated by using semi-aleatoric procedures, so that to create some kind of built-in or acoustic chorus or delay effects. And also the timbre is changed by utilizing unusual articulation techniques such as violin bow and felt tremolo. There is an inspiration for this piece, which is the Speminalium by Thomas Tallis, and also Three Voices by Morton Feldman, and the idea of having a multi-track piece for one performer in particular. The idea from Speminalium is to have density of masses that fluctuate throughout the piece. So actually we will only encounter the 33 guitars sounding together occasionally during the piece, so from time to time, and that's what de vez en cuando means in Spanish, actually. I mentioned before the use of transposition in the piece for solo guitar artefacto at the end, and this is an important feature of this piece as well. It's a 36-minute long piece, so it moves around different tonal areas, starting in D, moving to E, G, E flat, F, B flat, and D. The important thing is that there are superpositions of these gravitating fundamental areas. So you will have D and E at the same time, in some places creating the dissonance. I will explain this a little bit further in the next diagram. So in this piece, I'm using what I've been calling so far harmonic crossfades. So it's a combination between carefully controlled and consonant harmonies, as you can see with the red letters, and spaces of less systematized and more dissonant inharmonic harmony. So you will move from places where it sounds in tune, or there are consonances and there some of the harmonics sound in tune, and then you will superimpose another tonal area, creating this kind of gray area, more clustery like, which will eventually clear itself, revealing that we have moved to a different harmonic area. And that procedure gives the piece, makes the piece that the piece takes air. You get the contrast between the consonant areas and the dissonant areas, and at the same time the harmony kind of like renews itself. Regarding the articulation techniques which influence in the timbre, you will see that there are some techniques that are more or less usual, and some others that are not that frequent to find. There's a felt used for creating a very soft tremolo at the beginning. Also fingertip tremolo, which is more standard, and nail tremolo. There's also a charango-like tremolo utilized. You may know this kind of little guitar from the Andes, and we're borrowing the technique of this instrument applied to the guitar. Not in this piece, but in the last piece of the album, because it's for steel string guitar. It is also used an E-bow. But in this piece, we use a violin bow to make the dream of guitarists, so to have very long sustained notes. Also slide and capotasto, and I'm including the capotasto here, which is not exactly an articulation device, but since the capotasto allows me to move to different tonal areas by transposing, in the end, harmony becomes timbre, as we know. So I'm also including the capotasto as a resource related to the timbre control. And by utilizing these semi-aleatoric procedures, we also encounter places in the piece where you get the reference. So you believe that maybe a chorus or a delay or a reverb effect is used, but it's actually just produced by the guitars being slightly out of sync sometimes, and some other times they are very synchronized. But by varying by changing the amount of guitars that sound at a given time, I'm trying to create this different timbral areas. I would like to play a portion of the piece so you can get an idea, and then I will come back to this idea that I introduced at the beginning of the possibility of having an acousmatic guitar, and how relevant is the pitch, the scordatura, and the microtonal inflections in order to create this sound source, which does not always behave as the usual guitar we know. I will show a small portion at the beginning so you can see the felt tremolo in action, and then I will move later in the piece to show you another portion. Okay, sorry for the sudden leaps while playing the piece, but I wanted to show you different portions of it, and I think that gives a general idea of the piece. So by coming back to this notion that I briefly introduced before of an acousmatic guitar, taking the term from the acousmatic music, right, and as well as the acousmatic as the Pythagoreans understood it, is this desire to create music using guitars, but that you cannot tell at some points that it was made by a guitar, because the guitar has a very characteristic sound signature. And I always been fascinated and attracted by this idea of using this very common instrument in order to create timbres and sounds that are not that frequent. I guess I waited too many Christmas for the electric guitar to arrive home, but it never did. So I created these ways of using different techniques in order to using acoustic guitars to create special timbres. And in this aspect, I think tuning is very important to transform the instrument. Okay, and one of the projects with a piece like this is that we can think of the guitar in a more abstract way. So I want sometimes in the piece to sound more like a sitar or tamburo or like a viola caipira or a cello. So it's rather than a guitar, I'm conceiving this instrument as a plucked or bowed string instrument that can create different textures and different timbres. And one of the things that the microtonal tuning allows for is to create harmonies which behave more like timbral objects than to stack notes. We know, right, through the development in microtonal harmony, that when you have notes that are closer together or that have microtonal inflections, you create these sounds which is more like an amalgam timbral sound rather than a set of different pitches that you can recognize as a chord and still identify every individual pitch.
Excuse me, 2 minutes, Felipe, please.
Okay, thank you, Agustin. So basically, that is what I wanted to say. I will copy in case you didn't, you were not in the room before, I will copy in the chat the link for the full album as well as the video of the piece for 33 guitars. And I think that's it. And thank you very much. And now I'm very happy to talk and discuss.
Wow. Congratulations, Felipe. Very, very beautiful music. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm very involved with the guitar, but I would like to ask, I mean, there are general concepts we are already speaking today and in these days, and Johnny is smiling, so he's ready to go. And yeah, so I would like to ask in the group if there are any questions from everyone, from anyone. Otherwise, I'll give some some motivation to Johnny. Yeah, actually, I completely agree. What you call actually acousmatic guitar, I claimed for many years, or I realized that the guitar is such a flexible instrument. And then it was a problem for me, even, I mean, not just microtonality is a very small part of my work, in the microtones. But I mean, music is today much richer than 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and much richer. Not more beautiful, not better, but more open, for sure. And so my concerns were always, okay, why guitar players or why composers for guitar players? 99% of us or of them, because I consider myself in this 1%. If you're not writing in E minor, for example, why are you using a tuning that it's made for E minor, for example? So this, if depending on the material, I talk for me, depending on the material I'm going to use, which note do I need some notes to sustain a little bit more? Do I need like to make central notes, central resonance? I want to hide some of those, and it doesn't have to involve microtones at all. And the guitar, we don't have gut strings for 70 years now. There's technological everything. There's so many possibilities with the tension, with the notes, with the this plan, and this was also a problem for me. Sometimes you have a microtonal guitar, or at least in the 90s when I became interested about microtonality on the guitar. My question was, how is it possible to have E, A, D, G, B, E as open strings, and then with the frets to get an effective microtonal atmosphere? So I don't know what I agree with you completely, and I don't know, maybe somebody wants to add some other thoughts about this. A big day for the guitar actually today.
Yeah. So I understand what you mean. It's first thing I would say that every guitar is microtonal per se.
Yes,
not all music, but
absolutely.
In particular, in the case of the guitar, it's very difficult to tune and to keep the tuning consistent across different areas of the instrument. But I think, since I'm only using one detuned string in this tuning, I think what allows to, and actually the harmonic material is quite limited because it's basically based on transpositions of this open tuning. And I think the reason why the piece sustains the microtonal environment is just because there are different guitars in different areas at the same time. So usually you don't have only one string or one group of guitars playing in one particular string, but you have the detuned string in different transposition areas. But it's also, I think, it's a microtonal environment, to call it one way, which works in this piece. It's also a very enclosed universe. If I wanted to, I think this piece is more like an installation. It could last longer or shorter, or there could be variations of this piece. But once it is set, that is, I cannot get like a well-tuned 11th partial if I want it, or like a 13th or whatever. So it is a very restricted microtonal environment, if you want.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. And so when you're tuning and then you use the barré, the capotasto,
right?
So are you checking the tuning of the capotasto, or you just keep the open strings per se, admitting this microtonality that belongs to the guitar anyway?
Right. No, for a live performance, there is no way. I guess you could make small adjustments on the go, but I think if the strings are new and the instrument is very good, you should be able to maintain the minus 31 cents in different, maybe not all over across the fretboard, but I think it doesn't use all the fretboard either. It's just like I think there are 6-7 regions. So I think it should be more or less in tune, the minus 31 cents across the fretboard.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's one of the mysteries of it as well, because you kind of get used once you hear the main tuning, the main chords used. I guess you assume that the rest of the chords, even if they're not perfectly in tune, are related to the first one.
Yes, this mass. And so you don't have a recording, it haven't been performed live, 33 guitars yet?
No, there's only a studio recording that also goes with the video. But hopefully when the pandemics finish, we can have a live performance of it.
Well, yeah, looking forward to actually lovely piece and very Andina. This really charango is there it echoes. Okay, I'm talking maybe too poetic. Sorry, one more question, because this felt tremolo that you did at the beginning, right. I was trying to watch. I couldn't really see how you were producing this with a piece of cardboard.
Give me a second.
Thank you.
It is like a duster felt.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, it belongs to the guitar world. Very clever. Yes. Wow. Any questions in the group? I'm sorry, I'm taking too much time. Yeah. Johnny? Okay. I'm asking you to unmute, please. Thank you.
Yes. Just in terms of characterization. In a more universal sense, you are, number one, using the room as a performer, which we were just talking about. You were paying attention to something that by its omission is more of a problem. Like, if you don't take the room into account, if you, don't know how to, and now this is the next characterization, the ephemera is what I love that you get. You call it maybe changing the guitar timbre, but I think to the well-tuned piano by Lamont Young, which is also very long, 4.5 hours, 5 hours, which I've heard live, and they get these clouds in the air, which I don't think Lamont ever noticed, because he started with an upright in Italy, where he didn't have that Bosendorfer. And these clouds are not major and minor. They're definitely chords, harmonies, and I would be hard pressed to say how related they are to the fingers, right? So to me, it's a liberation of ephemera. So last point would be just that I like that you're bringing the guitar to its nature, which is it's a sound box. Right? And what you're doing is you're letting the monochord loose. Not directly, but it's a way to look at all the plucked instruments, where the fretting is basically for timbre. So there's a different timbre with the pluck when you have a fret. So it's a kind of a liberation for that. And I wouldn't be so sure where it could lead. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts, Johnny. Very interesting.
Actually, we are 1 minute out of time. I mean, over the time. But anyway, please, if you have any questions, you can write in the chat, or probably after the third, after the block, we might stay a little bit longer so we can discuss about some topics that we left behind. So a great video, by the way. I think it's really amazing how it is presented, and all the best with the live performance. I mean, that would be very lucky to be in a concert listening to this piece live. Is really amazing. Congratulations, Felipe. Thank you very much for sharing your work with us.
Thank you very much.
And we will continue with the next presentation by Andrew Watts. Tensio Novum, Microtonal approaches to the guitar in the music of Brian Ferneyhough. Andrew Watts is a composer of chamber, symphonic, multimedia, and electroacoustic, and electroacoustic works regularly performed throughout North America and Europe. His compositions have been premiered at the world-renowned venues such as Ravinia, the MFA Boston, Jordan Hall in Boston, and the Hollywood Music Room. Watts has written for top musicians and ensemble including Ekmelis, Proton Burn, Distractfold, Rage, Thornbones, Splinter Reeds, Kinthe, Line Upon Line, Tony Arnold, and Severin Ballon. In 2018 and 2019, Watts wrote a new large-scale work for chamber orchestra with dual soprano soloists entitled Adhocracies for Ensemble Dal Niente. He completed his DMA in composition at Stanford, receiving his master's with distinction from Oxford and his bachelor's with academic honors from the New England Conservatory in Boston. He has been a featured composer at the Mata Festival, Impulse Academy here in Austria, Rainy Days Festival in Luxembourg, Delian Academy in Greece, Young Composers Meeting in the Netherlands, Cheltenham Music Festival in England, Course for New Music at Darmstadt, Germany, Composite Festival in Italy, Ostrava Days Institute in the Czech Republic, High Score Festival in Italy, Wellesley Composers Conference in USA, Etching Festival France, Fresh Ink Festival USA, New Music on the Point USA, and the Atlantic Music Festival also in the United States. Watts is currently a lecturer in music composition at UC Santa Barbara's College of Creative Studies. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Andrew Watts.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. So I have a video of my lecture that I recorded last night. And as I was preparing for this symposium, I was focusing mostly on a paper form. And then when I was recording the lecture, I quickly realized that I had like an hour and 15 minutes. So I condensed
we have a concert right after. Yeah.
I condensed it. It's a 30-minute lecture that I have prepared. Oh. But just so you know, it jumps around a tad, and I'll address those afterwards. But okay. Yes, let me do a quick screen share.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Of course, yeah. I'm certainly cognizant of our time restrictions here. Yeah, so without further ado, here is my talk.
I'm sorry, I guess you should be speaking, right?
Santa Barbara. Oh, can you not see the screen share?
Yes, we see the screen. Can you check the sound, please?
Yeah, I can hear it on my end.
Can you play it again, please?
Yes, of course. Yep, got it. Share.
The little box. Yeah, yep, I forgot myself the whole day. The first day was, yeah.
Okay, take two. Thank you for joining me today.
Great.
My presentation is called Tensio Novum, and my name is Andrew Watts. I'm a faculty member in music composition at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And I'll be talking today about microtonality in the guitar music of Brian Ferneyhough. As an introduction, why is an examination of microtonality in the guitar music of Brian Ferneyhough a valuable perspective to gain understanding of the composer? For historical figures utilizing serial techniques, such an approach would be obvious. However, in the case of Ferneyhough's work, there is always the matter of competing concerns for the performer to address and most often prioritize. These secondary strata are often seen as elements frequently left up to interpretation or common convention by other composers, but carefully directed, notated, and examined throughout Ferneyhough's compositional output. In a discussion with James Burrows, the composer mentions the pitch domain as a useful origin for understanding, stating, "Personal priorities, the sort of information that one imagines sound to be able realistically to convey, inevitably differ. The sort of presumptions one makes as, for example, to the relationship between smallest compositional building blocks and the smallest oral unit reference conspire to create wholly different evaluational models. Some people start with a very central awareness of absolute pitch identities. I myself prefer to exploit the ever-changing field of forces created by the opposition of pitch and interval. This parameterization of musical elements from the perspectives of both composer and performer affords one a more viable rationale to focus wholly on the topic of pitch for analysis purposes than would otherwise be logical in works by different composers. Further, much has been written about Ferneyhough's approach to form, structure, and rhythm, whereas there has been little focus specifically on his treatment of pitch. In his guitar writing, pitch is an especially notable element, as it is used to create expressive relationships between the history of the classical guitar and a modern interpretation of the instrument. Guitarist Magnus Andersson writes in his article Brian Ferneyhough, Kurza Skatston 2, Considerations of an Interpreter, of the state the contemporary repertoire of his instrument was in by the late 1970s. Andersson contextualizes this period as having a boom in composers writing new works, albeit these tended to confirm the old prejudices against an instrument so dependent on its idiomatic assumptions that it made it impossible to compose outside the specialized circle of guitarists and composers for the guitar. In chronological order, I will address a summation of the existent research on Kurza Skatston 2 from 1989, as there has been a great deal published since the work's premiere. Then focus on an analysis both closed and comparative for No Time at All, which is 5 post pieces for 2 guitars from 2004, and Revnoy shards, which is fragments of delay, revision, and regeneration from 2008. These are works which have thus far received comparably little in terms of critical scholarship. This paper aims to provide a blend of score analysis and contextual understanding through interviews in order to contribute to the growing body of work on the contemporary classical guitar and the continuing scholarship on Ferneyhough's unique musical voice. So, moving on to an overview of the 3 primary guitar works. Due to the time constraints of this talk, I'm going to be focusing from this point onward primarily on the first work, Kurza Skatston 2, and on No Time at All. According to Andersson, the genesis of Kurza Skatston 2 was a letter he sent to Ferneyhough in the fall of 1979, inquiring about the potential for a new guitar work. This correspondence was followed up with a meeting between Andersson and the composer in Stockholm in 1980. Based on this first-person account by Andersson of the timeline of the work's 1990 premiere in Geneva and the research conducted by composer Felipe Castellani, it may be assumed that Kurza Skatston 2 had a long gestation and compositional period between 1983 and 1989, with the first 3 of 7 movements completed in the 1983 to 1984 timeframe. There was a desire from some guitarists, such as Magnus Andersson, to have newfound expression on the instrument, not marked by the established aesthetics of the guitar, as Andersson put it. Ferneyhough returned to writing for the guitar in his opera Shadow Time between 1999 and 2004. The opera begins with the suicide/death of philosopher Walter Benjamin and goes on to deal with various aspects of his writing and philosophy from the point of view of his descent into the underworld. In Shadow Time, the second section, entitled The Wrinkles on Gabriel's Wings, the composer brings together two persisting threads in his music of the past couple decades. On the one hand, it continues a series of works for soloist and chamber ensemble, each of which finds a new way of evoking yet questioning the traditional concerto concept. On the other, it forms part, in fact, the second scene of the scenic work. Shadow Time, which has been called an opera ofs, centers around the philosopher Walter Benjamin that has preoccupied the composer Ferneyhough since 1999. Without wishing to push paradox too far, one might say that we are dealing here with a concerto that is not really a concerto, forming part of an opera that is also not really an opera. The figure evoked in the title, evidently the angel of the Annunciation, the rustling whose wings long ago opened Heinrich Weber's cycle of mystery sonatas, and more significantly, led the 12th century Persian mystic Sohravardi to surmise that two wings, one oriented to celestial light, the other to earthly shadow, were the channel by which divinity could pass from heaven to earth. But there is a broader angelology here. Since Shadow Time revolves around Benjamin, the natural starting point is Paul Klee's picture Angelus Novum. In Benjamin's interpretation, an image of the angel of history who gazes back at the debris of everything that lies in front of us. This in turn evokes the terrifying angels of Rainier Maria Rilke's Luino elegies, the ones who serenely disdain to annihilate us. Returning to Shadow Time, this second scene is where, perhaps self-evidently, no words are sung or spoken. So what is it doing as part of an opera? It's no surprise to learn that it has a symbolic function. After a more or less realistic first scene at the hotel on the Spanish border where Benjamin will commit suicide, this angel concerto seeks to perform a sort of allegorical extinction of time, analogous to the deafness of time sometimes attributed to angels, who are alleged to act within time but are to be oblivious to it. The work is written for solo guitar and an ensemble of 13 players, 4 woodwinds, 3 brass, 2 strings, and various struck and plucked instruments, harp, piano, percussion, and most notably a second guitar tuned a quarter tone down, which one can partially regard as the soloist's dark other. Ferneyhough describes the piece as an investigation of suddenness as aesthetic and formal category, and this in itself gives cause for thought. For most composers, and indeed listeners, musical form acts as a kind of security, as something reliable to cling on. With Ferneyhough, this is rarely, if ever, the case. On the contrary, form is conceived more as a precarious tightrope over an abyss. But even in Ferneyhough's terms, this work represents an extreme. He once described it with a touch of gallows humor as 254 bars of total non sequiturs. More specifically, there are 124 fragments, each rarely more than a few seconds in length, and each meticulously sculpted with its own distinctive instrumentation and often glittering texture types. The point at issue here is that the material intentionally passes by too fast for one to make connections, even if they do in fact exist. This in turn gives an ironic twist to the invocation of Gabriel. Can his message, his annunciation, in fact be received within human time? In this context, it may not be too fanciful to interpret the soloist's last whirling figure as a final exasperated rustling of the angel's wings. Given the above description of the work from Shadow Time, it makes sense for the derivative work, No Time at All, to be named as such. The speed that material, fragmentary in nature, is presented, then abandoned, is often akin to flashes in a pan. The program of the opera scene also explains the subtitle of No Time at All, 5 post pieces for 2 guitars, as these are miniatures that occur in the post-terrestrial afterlife existence of Benjamin. In 2012, during a studio interpretation masterclass with Ferneyhough at the International Summer Course for New Music Darmstadt, the composer remarked that No Time at All loosely takes material from Shadow Time and reorganizes, reorchestrates, and expands on it. Regarding the form, the most notable feature is the relationship between movements 2 and 4, where they are identical except for having parts switched between the 2 guitars. This simple compositional transformation creates a substantial difference in the pitch relationships of the instruments, because one of the guitars is tuned a quarter tone lower, thereby resulting in new intervals from the same written material. So moving on to microtonality in Kurzaskatten 2. Of the 3 guitar works, Kurzaskatten 2 has received the most attention from the guitar community and in the form of scholarly articles. Perhaps this impact, compared to the other works for the instrument, is related to being the first and most substantial effort. The 7-movement composition weaves its constituent miniatures together in a fashion reminiscent of an abstract Baroque suite. When taken as a whole, the work is deeply concerned with pitch as an identity, whereby a distinction is established between standard tuning on the guitar and microtonal deviations as a distancing from the instrument's sense of self. In his publication, Music of the Margins, Anders Fordsell eloquently states this summation of the work as a locus of the disassociation of the me through a construction of presence and identity. There was a concerted effort from the onset of writing Kurzaskatten 2 to distance the work from cliches tied to the, as guitarist Magnus Andersson put it, structural prerequisites of the instrument. As a result, perhaps the most basic of structural elements of the guitar is immediately supplanted, the open string tuning. Here you can see the standard tuning, which of course sounds 8 dB, and the initial tuning in Kurzaskatten 2 for the guitar sounding also 8 dB from written here with microtones in place. This novel tuning retains the middle 2 strings, 3 and 4, which are G and D respectively, while, as Andersson puts it, emphasizing the deviance of the neighboring string and thus confers a sensitive presence to microtonal nuances. The tuning convention of the guitar is subverted again with the retuning while playing Kurzaskatten 2. The retuning of the instrument throughout performance has a number of ramifications, specifically when and to what pitch the given strings are changed. This is perhaps a greater restriction on composition than one may initially realize. As Fordsell rightly explains, because of the Scordatura, many pitches are only available in a single octave in a given fretboard position, whereas in normal tuning, most pitches are available in 2 or 3 octaves within a single position. The first 2 movements maintain the initial Scordatura, shown above to the right, with the third movement then retuning the 6th string to the standard E natural, with Ferneyhough remarking that immediately the lower end of the range begins to resonate a little more. Similarly, between the 4th and 5th movements, the 5th string is retuned to a standard A. Given this trend to, over time, progressively reset the instrument to its standard tuning, one may expect the final movements to apply these changes to the 2nd and 1st strings, respectively. However, only the 1st string eventually moves to standard tuning, thus leaving this pattern intentionally unfulfilled. By the end of the work, a stark imperfection in the intervallic relationships between the diatonicism, though formerly microtonal tunings, on the lowest 4 and highest strings, and the chromaticism of the second string is heard. Ferneyhough has contextualized this tuning motion as a compositional integration of performance technique for the 7 violent miniatures. Returning to the notion of overarching ramifications, Fordsel points out that in practice, what this tuning performance technique means from a general pitch analysis standpoint is a reduction in the number of quarter tones available over time. Despite the narrowing down process where every second miniature one string is retuned to normal, the final entry, a fantasy of sorts, focuses exclusively on the alternately tuned second string. It is curious that of the Scordatura strings, only the microtonally deviated strings are retuned through performance. The second string, as the only chromatically altered string, is left in its altered state. Beyond the desire to emphasize the second string in the final movement, it is possible that, due to the particular relationship this B-flat maintains with the standard tuning of the rest of the guitar, a gesture of defiance against the instrument's history was intended. A tritone, a long-standing symbol of cultural dissidence, in dissonance remains in the face of corrections the other strings have undergone here. In his research, Castellani describes this perceptual result as a progressive abandonment of the original peculiar sound and a kind of resumption of the instrument's more familiar resonance. Guitarist/researcher Diego Castromagas has examined the influence of German philosopher Walter Benjamin's work on Ferneyhough's decision to begin with the aforementioned Scordatura and progressively retune the instrument towards a state of standard tuning. Castromagas points out that Ferneyhough's own writings on the piece always refer to the last text of Benjamin's sequence, Short Shadows 2. Itself entitled Short Shadows, it contains the image of the sun casting shadows over objects while approaching its zenith until at noon, every shadow disappears and everything just becomes itself, a quintessential monad. This image, according to Ferneyhough, is captured in the retuning of the strings throughout the piece. Here's where Ferneyhough's allegorical approach for Kurzgesagt 2 comes in. There is a clear dialogue with the past and the history of the guitar, intentionally negotiating and confronting its cliches, as previously alluded to through the initial conversations with Anderson over the work. In another conversation with Diego Castromagas, Ferneyhough remarked, "It's history and innovation. Everything you do here is really based upon history, but at the wrong speed, and that's why I'm making use of all these suggestions, addressing in some way the configuration of history. In sound, not just the configuration on the fingerboard, and we have to project that onto it. That's the erratic quality. It is not a leap to then connect the erratic quality of Kurzgesagt 2, achieved through both the techniques and temperament, with the resonant gestalt of the instrument. Such speech is to be understood as both metaphorical, as shown in the Ferneyhough quote above, and literal, as illustrated by Fordsel, stating both Bartók pizzicati and striking the body of the instrument result in all the strings vibrating, create a more general and complex resonance than that affected in sympathetic ringing. Looking at the implications of these actions, the conception of the guitar in Kurzgesagt 2 as changing resonances is prevalent in much of the existing scholarship. For instance, in the first movement, the chords create what Castellani refers to as a field of resonances, shown below. Imagining the pitch language of the work as a collection or field of sonorities tied in part to the temperament of the instrument at a given moment is valuable in contextualizing the larger scale form. When interested in the specific motion and behavior of pitches within Kurzgesagt 2, it is necessary to consider the means of composition. In the first movement, for example, Ferneyhough utilized 2 distinct types of polyphonic structures. The first is made up of 2 independent layers of natural harmonics. The decision to apply natural harmonics here is out of a physical feature of strings and optimization of fingerings on the fretboard. Natural harmonics, when plucked, continue to sound even after the finger is lifted from the harmonic note along the string. Thereby, through this technique, one is allowing for more independent and overlapping microfigures. Returning to the notion of two types of polyphonic structures, second structure focuses on what the composer refers to as a polyphony of successiveness. The result overlay of these structures creates behaviors for the pitches that are sometimes observed with trends or tendencies, as seen in the first 10 measures, and other times observed as chaos-like, as seen after measure 11. Such behaviors have been mapped out by Castellani in the diagram below. Ferneyhough also emphasizes that small changes in behavior result in novel material later in the composition as well. For the second movement, there are points the octave register and string of some pitches has been changed, thus, in effect, producing wholly new pitch constellations filtered through the Scordatura of those strings. There is a cyclical procedure in play too, as the rate of rhythmic, as heard as rhythmic cycles, increase over the course of the movement. More new pitches have to be added on at the end of each section, thus progressively modifying or wiping over the initial quasi-motivic figural clarity. The function then of microtonality is that of an ever-increasing wave of opaqueness, washing over what was previously clear and becoming blurred. In the fourth movement of Kurzgesagt 2, a traditional waltz is used as the general mold. Here, the melody and accompaniment emblematic of the waltz style is morphed when filtered through the microtonal guitar as a medium. Ferneyhough also flips the common traits of melody and accompaniment in the movement, giving the accompaniment more dense, elaborated materials, and the melody much slower, drawn-out lines. The effect of this concept, when applied to the tuning of the instrument, is that the melody is treated with close microtonal pitch windings, usually involving more than one string. Ferneyhough elaborates on this pitch treatment as the fourth movement progresses, saying the individual nodes in the harmonics, natural harmonics, played throughout the accompaniment, were deliberately chosen to maximize close interval microtonal friction. This microtonal friction, though not heard simultaneously as in the fourth movement, is further alluded to in the sixth movement. Here, the composer gradually replaces normally produced pitches by nearly equivalent natural harmonics. In this case, nearly equivalent means the intentional differences between the string harmonics arising from the overtone series and the normally produced 12 equal division of the octave pitches. In practice, these are subtle colorings for many of the harmonics, as their difference in frequency is only a few cents, while others, closer to a quarter tone difference, are likely experienced as the friction mentioned above. The other aspect to keep in mind between the microtonal friction of the fourth movement and that of the sixth is the specificity of the former and indeterminacy of the latter. Looking at the score, it is possible to deduce the intended microtonal intervals resulting from the harmonics in the fourth movement because the detailed string and fret indications. This is not the case in the sixth movement, where Ferneyhough leaves such detail to the discretion and decision-making of the performer, resulting in a high likelihood of different string choices and thus harmonic resultants with each guitarist. The seventh movement funnels the acoustic universe of the guitar down to a singular point. The behavior of pitches up to this point in Kurzgesagt 2 has been a large-scale motion across movements from unfamiliar sonorities on the instrument to familiar resonances, natural harmonics, built on the very foundation of what gives the guitar its standard tonal identity. The composer details this point at the end of the work as the process comes to a head, stating, in effect, the final measures restrict this universe almost to a dimensionless point by eliminating 5 of the 6 strings from the still highly active discourse. The final note is appropriately a natural harmonic B flat, a perfect victory, perhaps, for the defamiliarization principle over the ineludible encroachment from panel to panel of normal guitar sonority. So moving on to the conclusion. Finally, there is the topic of motivation for given microtonality in the different works and sections of works. As both confirmed at points by the composer and suspected at other points in my research, there are 2 basic categories of microtones employed for the guitar by Ferneyhough. The first category, as I have stated before, is expressive use, meaning the intentional crafting of a musical line to elicit a desired microtonal interval or intervals. This usage is seen in localized cases where the composer has written to evoke close interval microtonal friction, for example, throughout Fiuczynski 2. The second category, as I mentioned earlier, is labeled systemic use, meaning that a pre-compositional decision or decisions were made with global implications regarding the microtonal pitch behavior. An algorithmically minded approach to composition is hardly specific to his writing. However, what is peculiar here is the systemic applications of the fingerboard positions rather than the pitches in the absolute. Gordon-Soll observes this as a decisive trait of Ferneyhough's guitar writing, where the left hand is usually fixed in one position of the fingerboard at any given time, with the fingers fixed in one fret each, i.e. without stretches. Prime example of this is seen in the 4th movement of Fiuczynski 2. Here, Ferneyhough did not work out the individual pitches in advance, but instead focused on left-hand finger positions, creating a comprehensive table of possible guitar fingerings from 1 to the 18th position on the instrument. In the collective writings, he remarked, all possible combinations of 4 fingers over any combination of the 6 strings were plotted. I then planned a permutated sequence, not containing all of these resources by any means, but a significant portion of them, which I spread out over the entire metric/rhythmic structure of the piece with a view to fixing combination of strings, placing of fingers, and fret positions would be available at any given moment. I have constructed my analyses of No Time at All and Renvoy shards around these 2 distinct applications of microtonality and believe this to be the key in contextualizing Ferneyhough's pitch language, both throughout his guitar writing and his recent works in general. His workflow is identifiable within the fabric of the compositions at hand. Once one knows exactly what to look for, that is. There is a common process of layering the musical elements at different stages. For instance, starting with the metrical layout of the measures, then the more local rhythmic schemes, then drawing from the pitch collection, then so on. This process lends itself to having distinct phrases of systems followed by expression or intuition. It is this balance between system and expression that makes Ferneyhough's guitar writing stand out within the repertoire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.
Maybe I can take it. Can you show the bibliography again, please? I can take a picture. Do you mind?
Yes, of course.
First page, yeah. Okay, I got it. Okay, and second page, please.
Yep. Here is the second page.
Okay, thank you so much.
And then there's one.
Is there a third one?
Yes, there it is.
Okay. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah. Okay. Do you mind? I'm going to stop your screen sharing. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to ask in the group. First of all, if no questions in the chat. If anyone has any questions for Andrew. There are many guitar players here. I'm sure some of them played Ferneyhough's music.
Magnus Andersson.
I mean, I don't know, probably Dan Lippel. I mean, he's an excellent, I don't know if Maxime Trianov played Ferneyhough's music or Andriy Brahim. I mean, there are many good guitar players specialized in contemporary music. Yeah, Dan Lippel is there. Any questions in the group? You said you have not. I think Matthew is talking. Yes.
That's not so much related to guitar playing, but more the Frankfurt school, and because I believe that Ferneyhough was influenced by the aesthetics of Adorno and Walter Benjamin.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Oh, was that the question?
Yeah, I just wondered if you had anything more to say about, if you had anything to say about that topic.
I mean, I did mention it a bit in the presentation how of the 3 guitar works, 2 are clearly influenced by Benjamin's different texts. So with his work for solo Scordatura guitar, he's basing it off of these different short passages from Benjamin, and then with No Time at All, he's taking the opera that he wrote, Shadow Time, and using the second scene as the starting point for that work for 2 guitars. So yeah, he's a big fan of a lot of the philosopher's works, and yeah, I mean it's very closely related to his guitar output. Three of the 3 works, 2 were heavily influenced by the German philosopher.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, like I said, I'm a bit remiss that I had gone so long when I originally recorded it that I had to do this weird chop up version to get something that was a little more palatable for our format. But I do look forward to sending some of the specific analyses of the different works that I've done to get more into the nitty gritty in terms of the text itself. Do we have any other questions?
Has this guitar piece, Kurze Schatten, ever been performed? As far as I know, there is a recording by Magnus Andersson, but has it ever been performed in public?
Yeah, it's been performed a number of times.
By whom?
A lot of people. I mean, if you type in the work's name on YouTube, you'll see. I guess you can't trust YouTube. I don't know if those are public performances per se, but there's certainly a number of performances and performance videos up on YouTube.
Yes, I think that there was a recent one this year. There was a discussion at some page on Facebook for guitar players. They were discussing about complexity, and how some musicians, some guitar players perceived the music in reality. They were claiming. So I'm sure there are several interpretations. I can look for this. Well, I don't have the chance now, but I'm sure maybe somebody has the opportunity. And
yeah, as far as I'm aware, all 3 of his guitar works have been performed in public. The latter 2 I've been to performances of, so certainly know about those. But the one that you were talking about, the Kurze Schatten 2, I haven't seen that performed live. However, it's also the most frequently discussed of his guitar works. So I would be surprised if no one has played it live.
Yeah, I mean, Raphael Orpheus, he studied with Jürgen Rück. I mean, I'm very bad remembering details, I mean, I can see things, but then a lot of information doesn't really, I cannot memorize a lot of details, but probably Raphael could give us an answer. I mean, I'm sure he knows, or because of Jürgen, and Jürgen is also not with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was checking for the next participant, actually. Okay. Yes, we still have 3 minutes for questions. Any thoughts? Any more? Otherwise, I will make. We can finish, and I can
Maybe.
try. Yes, sure. Please.
An interesting remark. I met Magnus Andersson in 1990, and he had the score with him, the score of Kurze Schatten, and he showed it to me. It was a guitar festival in Lago Negro, Italy, and she showed the score to me and I asked him, "And you can play all this?" And then he answered, "By now I can play only the first movement." So this was a very interesting time also for him, because he did not know if he could realize the whole score. But later on he did, and I think 1 or 2 years later he sent the recording of all the 7 pieces.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you for this comment. I'm making a picture of a comment by Maxim Trianov, because I cannot really see it very well, so I will read from him. Hello, question is, it seems like Ferneyhough's complexity almost impossible to reach in real life performance, and it sounds almost like improvisation. Your thoughts about that?
Sure.
Actually, there was this discussion I told you a few months ago. It was mainly, many people were claiming it sounds really like an improvisation. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I did my doctorate with Brian. He was my advisor. So I've certainly talked to him a lot about his own music and his thoughts on performances of his own pieces. I think in terms of the impossibility to accurately reproduce what he's writing on the page, he's very concerned with the hierarchy of a given performance. So as I had mentioned in the lecture, there's this parameterization often present, especially in some of his older works, where you have a lot of different strata and secondary strata that are occurring concurrently, or occurring simultaneously. And he's leaving it up to the decision of the performer what they're prioritizing at a given moment. You know, you might have this incredibly complicated rhythm with a very difficult gesture and, you know, nailing a certain harmonic at the same time. And the performer might be able to do one of those 100%, like perfectly, they can do the rhythm. And then they might be able to do some of the pitches almost there, they're 80%, and then the harmonics 50% of the time they get it. So you do get very different performances, and I'm hesitant to call that approach an improvisation because it is heavily guided by the score. And they are striving for a certain type of realization of the score. Now, it's not an improvised version of the score, but it is that specific performer's realization of these different demands that the composer is laying out. So I should also remark that the difference between someone who is approaching one of Ferneyhough's scores and really trying to address each of the parameters, and then someone who's just vaguely improvising what is going on,
of course,
is very
it's quite different. But I mean, of course, I'm not as a composer, for example. I'm completely on the other side of the register, of the board. because I like to have a musical material as the best I can get, and then to show it as simple as possible. It's for me like cooking. It's very important. And then I didn't read a lot of things. I don't really know Ferneyhough's idea, but if I had the chance, because I know the instrument, I mean, what is your goal? Actually, when you put a slight microtone, a couple of cents above, and then you do a Bartok pizzicato on the guitar. So it's going to get out of tune. I mean, so this sense, you're destroying this. Why do you want to do this? I'm sure there's a reason. But a lot of things, I mean, if it was a student of composition showing me, I would say, hey, this is wrong. But of course, I'm sure all this complexity of these thoughts, all these layers, really, really very well planned layers, there must be a thought. And I'm really sorry, Andrew. I'm 2 minutes now. At the beginning, I was a little bit slow, and now we are 3 minutes over the time.
Of course.
I would like to thank you very much for this very interesting lecture. Something really, really new to the symposium, and congratulations for your presentation, Andrew.
Very much.
And 3 minutes over the time, I would like to continue and welcome Mr. David Fiuczynski. He will present. Hi, David. Great to see you.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, he will present. Mozart said the best musicians in the world at Bird, Microtonal, Melodic, and Harmonic Chord Scale Possibility, based on Bird Song Transcriptions. I mean, you don't need presentation, but if you allow me, I would like to say a couple of words.
Okay.
David Fiuczynski's music is often described as unclassifiable, challenging, and invigorating. Fiuczynski leads the underground cult band Screaming Headless Torsos and has toured and/or recorded with Jack DeJohnette, Stewart Copeland, The Police, Michel De Giosilo, Rudresh Mahantapa, John Medeski, Hasidic New Wave, Bernie Worrell P-Funk, and other more, and has performed at festivals all over the world. Born in the US, David grew up in Germany, where he was always interested in mixing and fusing different music elements. His recent music melds traditional melodic elements with Middle East, Asia, India, and Eastern Europe, with rock, funk, electronica, and other styles. This concept started on a gig in Morocco in 1992. The Moroccan players noted that Hendrix visited the country, and this gave Fuse an idea: hard grooves with Eastern inflected melodies, putting the listener into a very colorful trance. Could this be the music that Jimmy would play today? Fiuczynski's band, Kif, celebrates a living Hendrix who's kicking it in Casablanca and rocks the Casbah every Saturday night. David studied at New England Conservatory's third string department and is also a 2011 Guggenheim Fellow in Composition and directs the Planet Microjam Institute for Microtonal Studies at Berklee College of Music. His latest recordings are Geslawa Fiuczynski, Microjazz, featuring Jack DeJohnette on drums with microtonal music inspired by expressionist painting, and featured members on Georgi Mikatsi's Georgian microjams based on the microtonal tunings of traditional folk choirs from the Republic of Georgia. Please welcome David Fiuczynski.
Hello. Hello. Wow, Augustine, finally, it's so strange to actually see you. So, and hopefully soon we can actually see each other in person. That would be refreshing.
Yes.
So, I guess a little bit about myself. I got into microtones, I guess, in a way that many people get into microtones. I started to listen to music from the Middle East and Indian, Asia, and so forth. And I don't know, some Arabic melody that I heard, I tried to play, and so this is fretless and this is fretted. So I tried to play this melody on, the fretted guitar, and I noticed, wow, there's a bunch of notes that don't fit into our 12-note per octave system. So that was the beginning of my journey into microtones. Took various lessons and jammed with a lot of New York downtown bands, bands that mixed improvisation, jazz, and so forth with so-called world music, stuff like the Paradox Trio, Hasidic New Wave, and so forth. When I was 42, I returned to school, actually, and I guess the universe was looking out for me. I didn't plan it this way, but I was lucky to take Joe Maneri's very last microtonal class. And I learned his 72-note per octave system, and I basically work off of quarter tones, and when I need more, then I use 6 tones, 12 tones, what have you. So, yes, Mozart is right. Birds are absolutely incredible. So, can I share screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. So believe it or not, at the beginning of this piece, this is a bird. I was blown away when I heard this bird. I think it's mostly in Brazil. It's called the uirapuru. Let me just play that again. I mean, wow, I don't know what else to say. This is a bird. All right, while I do that, I jotted out a little analysis. So here we go. Amazing, even kind of like an AABA form. So, to me, this is very inspiring, beautiful. So I'm curious, what is this? Interpreting this now, it's obviously very subjective. For me, any sequence of notes you hear over and over again, the beginning and the ending note are going to have some kind of, I guess, tonic. So this is obviously my interpretation. So I'm hearing some kind of D minor, I guess you could call it uirapuru. If you line these notes up into a scale, you have a minor triad with a 6, a slightly sharp flat 7. This notation means 6 tones, so 33 cents sharp. These land roughly on quarter tones, so you have a sharp 3, a sharp 4. Then the answer, there's a few extra notes. And so then I'm thinking a microtonal chord scale. So if I line this up, sound check. Augustine, is this cool? Too quiet? Too loud?
It's perfect to me.
Great. Okay. So if you line this up into a scale, you get something like. then maybe we could borrow this neutral 6 from the response here. Oh, and then I didn't write this down, sorry. There is another quarter sharp 4th. This is nothing new. So then my curiosity, is kind of ridiculous in a way, but now you could have avian. In English, that means anything pertaining to birds. You could have an avian chord scale. So now if I harmonize this, you could get something like, whoops. There's no 2. I'm going to throw in a quarter flat 2 because I like it. And if I use a delay and take off the attack, there's some really beautiful sonorities that you can get. So this is a way you could comp then in an improvisational context. Comp, are we all cool with English? Augustine, does everyone speak German? This institute of yours is based in?
Some of us, yes, of course, but the official language is English.
Okay, so if anyone has a question, just jump in.
Thank you.
It's been a long time for me, aber man spricht auch Deutsch, so I can translate if anyone has a question in German.
Thank you.
So the next step is, how can I improvise? So now I'm experimenting. So now, what about, again, it's kind of ridiculous, but I guess, how about avian bebop runs? So I would practice this scale up and down, borrow a quarter flat 2 because I like it. So then what could I come up with? And as far as I'm concerned, a little bit of blues never hurts. It is, after all, microtonal. Maybe some blues slide stuff. I've investigated some Middle Eastern, Indian, and East Asian approaches. So what if I tried this with Indian slides? So I would, experiment from a lot of different points of view what is possible. What you can also do is just kind of a free thing and just see what happens. If I take motifs from the melody, I don't want to fall into a stereotype, but this bird is Brazilian, it is South American, so it does have this kind of almost, salsa kind of thing. and so forth. And I recorded this, and I'll play a short excerpt. So you're going to hear the bird. You're going to hear, with this composition, I was very interested in different continuums. Like, how could I, instead of, here's the melody and here's improvisation, is there anything we could do in between? Well, here's the melody, maybe a kind of free improv, then a short through composed section, improvising on that, and then there's another section where there's a different type of improvisation. Sometimes there's structured improvisations. Like in the beginning, you'll hear we very much try to stick with the melody. So here's the Brazilian Uirapuru. Okay, so all lines, all resulting harmonies were based off of this mode, few, couple 2-3 extra notes. There's no 2, so I left it up to the performers if they wanted to, whatever kind of 2 or 9 they wanted to put in there. And all the improvisations, as much as possible, we tried to stick as closely as possible to the theme of the bird. At the very end, the swana player, it's a Chinese like oboe, he kind of did his own thing. So again, another continuum of improvisation, either totally sticking to it, playing off of it, adding time and playing with it, and then doing whatever you want. So that was really important to me with this particular piece in the Uirapuru. So before we move on to the next bird, is there any questions?
Actually, David, I'm mainly enjoying very much, and it's very difficult to look for a question, but actually I have a crazy one. Did you try to play your music for the Uirapura bird? Uirapura bird.
Did I try to what?
To play this song, this improvisation for the birds, to see the reaction of the birds.
Oh,
I know
I'd
it's
have
very
to go.
crazy, but it's one of the first things that came to mind.
I'd have to go to Brazil, because that's where that bird is.
Okay, yeah.
But I've never been to Brazil, so I guess that would be a good
They
reason.
can play your music there. Yeah.
There's no somebody who will play that.
I'd love to, but the thing is, the thing is, I've done this before, where I was checking out birds and I was trying to draw them out, and so I on my iPhone I pulled up, and it actually kind of makes them nuts. It kind of makes them crazy.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, they're like, okay, so, here I am. What do you want? You called me. It might be time of mating. It really kind of messes things up. So maybe it might be a good idea. I don't know. Wow, Manfred Stanke is here. Wow, big respect, big respect. Anti-Ferneyhough. Oh, well, I hope that's a compliment.
Yes.
Wow, the real person.
Absolute respect to you.
Love. What was that? That 43 note with DX7. How did you get a good tone out of a DX7? Oh man. And what is that? Parch harp? I've listened to that so many times. Love it.
Oh, David, I loved your piece now. Your kind of improvisation, and you're both the worlds of composition and improv at the same time.
Thank you.
So lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, I really wanted to have a continuum of through compose to complete improvisation, and try to have many steps in between. I love jazz, but it's like now you play the melody, now you improvise, then you play the melody, and that's the kind of the end of the story. I mean, there's more, but I really wanted to try to get a smooth transition. Anyway, nice to meet you, and German, right?
Yes, now I'm in Germany, Baltic Sea. Yes.
Okay, but where are you from?
From Hamburg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you?
Born in Jersey, grew up near Mönchengladbach.
Oh, Du sprichst Deutsch?
Ja.
Ja, wow. Ja.
Also diese Zoom-Sache, ich hasse das so. Hoffentlich können wir sich mal treffen, Bier trinken.
Wir sprechen zusammen. Schönes Bier, genau. Hilfe, Pilz. Ja.
Okay, wow, nice to meet you. Big fan.
David, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good to. My camera isn't working for some reason, but it's good to meet you after all these years of corresponding.
Stephen James Taylor?
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God, man, all the heavies here. Ah. Well, as much as I've listened to Parch Harp, I've listened to Mood of Neptune over and over and over. Oh my goodness. Man. Wow, all my heroes are here. This is crazy.
Well, I love what you're doing here, man. I think it's just, it's really exciting because I kept thinking of cuisine. You know, you're blending like Indian with Thai, with South American, with the blues. And the fact that your source is organic, I think just adds to that beautiful narrative that you're exploring. And I wanted to ask, you know, I had a similar idea a couple years ago. I tried to write a max patch that would analyze bird call frequencies, derive the scale, and then make it available to you so that you could, basically jam off it. Essentially what you've done. And so my question is, are you in the process of creating a kind of database of bird calls and the scales derived from them? Because I think what you tapped into is so fruitful that you could really spend the rest of your life just on that, you know, in the sense that there is, it's such a fresh approach to microtones because there's no theory, you know, but you have the theory to know, you know, where you're close to a just interval and all that kind of stuff. But have you thought about expanding this, you know?
I haven't. It was just a theme. I mean, the next thing I wanted to do was whale songs, and that kind of fell by the wayside. Maybe. I'll tell you, I'd rather like find some cool birds and jam with you.
Yeah. That's interesting because I talked to somebody in Africa years ago about microtonality and why each village tunes their marimbas differently. Just like in Indonesia, the gamelons are tuned differently depending on where you go. And he thought, just shooting from the hip, that maybe it had to do with the bird calls that are indigenous to the area.
Wow.
That those intervals get kind of acclimatized into the psyche.
Wow.
Is anybody on the call familiar with anyone who's done research on that? I'm not, but I would love to read up on it if anyone.
We should do it now before the environment takes over.
Yeah.
I mean, I kid you not, if I hadn't seen it myself, but I don't think it was a mockingbird, but I saw the bird and it did this. It was imitating a car alarm. So yes, it should be cataloged before we destroy their songs.
Save that for a further conversation then.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe we could do something together.
Maybe. It'd be fun.
The next bird. Is a chickadee. Ja, ich habe eine Meise. And it is a Carolina chickadee. The Carolina chickadee and the regular chickadee, they look the same, but indicative is the song. That really sets them apart. Up here in Massachusetts, it's the state bird, and it goes. Carolina chickadee is further south. It always does four note, like this. Oops, I sang out of tune. Sorry. So I pulled this up, Stephen, because you mentioned I don't know what that thing you're using. This is called Sonic Visualizer. It's pretty accurate. I mean, if you look over here, that note is within a few cents. So it's something like this one is completely off. I don't know. Maybe you hear it. I don't. Whoops. Great. Oh no, what happened? Oh, it crashed. All right. So I hear B, A, and then C roughly quarter sharp. Now that's only 4 notes, so Stephen, I don't know, it's not really enough for a scale. So this is, again, this is interpretation.
Right.
So here we have okay, now so again, it's an assumption that the G is the root. So we have 1, 2, 3, and a quarter sharp. I love that one. The what's that? The 11th overtone. Well, 49 cents. So quarter sharp 4, and you could have some kind of G major, kind of a G microlydian. This is where Tolgahan's going to have to correct me. I think Rust, although to be sure, a makam is not a scale, so I'm talking about pitch set. I'm going to add a neutral 7 because I like that sound. And so then you could have chords like this. I love this. So I've tried some bop stuff, some blues, some Indian. How about kind of a, oh, you were just talking about Indonesia. How about a little gamelan? All right, Carolina Chickadee. And then I have, for my before I play my final piece, any more questions? Okay. So, I don't really love solo guitar playing. So I found a band for you. And so I don't know if you heard about that awful incident in Central Park where this African-American birder was checking out birds, asked a lady to put her dog on the line because the dog was scaring the birds away, and she felt threatened. She called the police. Awesome, great. And it got completely out of hand. She overreacted, and very interestingly enough, he refused to cooperate with the police because they were going to prosecute her, and he just feels like, hey, dumb mistake, how about we move on? So I wrote a little piece in honor of him. It's I looked up birds in Central Park, and the hermit thrush is really cool. This is called Einsiedlerdrossel. So let me play this the bird for you. So here's the hermit thrush song. So then what I did is I took each beginning note and I got rid of the warble after it. So instead of blah 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 blah, it's just the first notes of the hermit thrush. So again, these are only the beginning notes. So I extracted that. And surprise, surprise, I was able to get a band for you. I think some of the best in the world. Philip Gerschlauer, I don't know if you've heard of him. Jack DeJohnette played with Miles Davis, Coltrane, and so forth. Matt Garrison, who's the son of the bass player who played with Coltrane. And Georgi Mikadze is an incredible microtonal keyboard player. So once again, here's the bird call, the reduction, and then this jam I threw on this existing track. So I'd like to hear we jazz musicians say if somebody's happening, they're a cool cat, and I think these birds are really cool cats. So here we go. How about some animal music? Yeah. And so, bird jams. You heard it here first. I think we're almost out of time. Any more questions, please let me know. And Augustine and everybody else, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm really sorry. This was the week from hell. Really, the COVID testing app for Berkeley went down and it was just a mess. And then there's other stuff that happened. So, are these presentations archived?
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm recording everything, and because it's a very important documentation for the symposium. I don't know still what we're going to do with it yet. Normally, we put it on the Ecmelic Society webpage. We ask, naturally, of course, the participants before if they agree that we show this. I don't know if we are going to do this time, if it will show in other platforms. But I think normally, like always, on the webpage of the Ecmelic.
Okay, yeah. I'd like to really inform myself. I feel terrible, but this week sucked. It's terrible. Quick answer, pedals, very, very basic. It's just a volume pedal, a delay pedal. And then very cool are these freeze pedals, where you can just play anything. And then you hit the pedal, and it just repeats the tone. It could be a single note, it could be a chord. I mean, that's pretty boring and out of tune. If for some of you really wanted a major chord. It is a freeze pedal, which is very cool. I would recommend there's a more higher one. It has tails, meaning when you click it off, it fades out instead of a hard stop. That's kind of a drag. But yeah, just really basic stuff. Oh, Mr. Dalton is here. Wow, Augustine, you got all the heavies. Jesus. Donald.
And of course, we know Philip Geslauer. And I mean, he studied with Johnny Reinhardt. He's also here with us.
Johnny, yes. Johnny is a bad cat.
For me, this meeting is right now, I can't think too much because I'm enjoying too much. It's a dream come true to see all the Microtonal stars. I'm really thrilled, yeah.
Well, wow. I mean, I'm humbled to be part of this group. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, David.
All right, Manfred. Thank you.
Oh.
Wow, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. It's an amazing moment. I'm really thrilled. I was dreaming of seeing you at the symposium for many years, trying my best. Yeah.
Gosh, well, listen, I hope things move forward, that we can do this in person.
Yes.
Next time we'll do.
Yes.
These lockdowns, I don't know what solitary confinement is like. Man, I got a taste. Not fun.
Yeah. And I remember, I don't know how many years passed already, but a bunch of years when you came here with Radres Mahantapa, when you played here in Salzburg.
Yeah.
I think it was already a long time, yeah. I hope you come around again. Maybe with Philip, that would be amazing, yeah.
There's discussions to do some more stuff with Philip and also with Georgi, with Georgian Microjams.
Yes.
You know, that was disappointing. I watched this guy for 10 years. He was a great student, and I watched him grow into an incredible player, a great composer. And then he took my microtonal class, and then he went back home, and he analyzed all these Georgian tunings, and then he came up with his own stuff. We recorded it. We got a record deal, actually. We put it out. We got great reviews, except for Beatdown. Oh, whoops, Downbeat magazine. Sorry. And we even had a tour set up, and then COVID set in.
Yeah.
So we're trying to plan, because I don't want to give up on that music. I mean, it's amazing to watch him grow into you can consider him a unique Georgian composer. It's amazing.
And
So yes, we will try and come your way.
yes.
And if we do, I will come and bother you.
Please, please.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, so thank you so much for, it's been delighting to have you at the symposium. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the participants today. It's been a very memorable day. Thank you, David, once again.
Thank you.
And all the best.
Also.
All the best. Thank you, everyone.
Right.
And yes, so I'll see the rest of the group tomorrow. David, if you want to watch and join us at any time, we're gonna be here tomorrow.
I'm gonna try. You know, here in the States, that's another thing I didn't consider. It's the July 4th weekend, so it's like a big family thing.
Yes, I remember our conversations with the program. Yeah.
So
thank you so much that it happened that you're with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So have a great time. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Good night.
Next.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Have a good time. Bye bye. See you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Hi, Hans Gunther.
Hi.
Okay, ciao. Tschüss.
Tschüss.
Ciao.